this next question, I don't even know how to word it. I sort of just thought it as we're here talking, but we talked about the housing crisis here in Halifax, but also, throughout the province. If you go on to, say, Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace, you're looking to rent a unit, there's policies in place that say, no discriminatory sort of ads can be put up. Some ads you do see, they will be specific to say, we're just looking for female tenants and things like that. And to me, that makes sense for many reasons. But if folks don't want to rent to, say, a black person or a member of the LGBT community, if they can ascertain that someone's from the LGBTQ community, they don't need to put it up on an ad. They can just not, maybe call those people back or, check them off the list. How does the housing crisis affect black people? Does it affect black people in additional ways that, we're not even able to track? Or are there ways that most people don't see that it affects the black community that you see in your work? How does the housing crisis, which is affecting all Nova Scotians, does it have an additional particular effect on the...
Yeah, I think that we have to look at it in terms of looking at already the challenges that we know that black people are facing. And so when people say, this housing crisis affects black people differently, well, it does, because we're already experiencing challenges in every other sort of social sector. And now the housing crisis on top of that makes it even more challenging, because if we're already experiencing racism in the justice system, experiencing it from the education system, experiencing it wherever we go, we're feeling hypervigilant, it's affecting our mental health, and then now we have to figure out, navigate this sort of housing crisis with all of those other things. Yes, and I think that, we also need to understand, there's different levels of sort of homelessness. There's absolute homelessness where you may be living on the street, but then there's also homelessness where within the black community, we may often see people are couch surfing. They technically don't have somewhere to go, but oftentimes, you may be able to bounce around a little bit to different homes, but you don't really have, a place of your own.
And even with respect to, I guess, units that are available, statistically speaking, even with numbers that I see that the Road to Economic Prosperity Committee put out to show that, black people generally have less disposable income, make less money, things like that. And so even when there is a unit available, I would think statistically, black people would be less able to afford it, and then people are less willing to want to rent out to black people in the first place without even having to say so.
Yeah,
is that how you see it, or am I oversimplifying it? Am I missing the mark?
No, I don't think that you're missing the mark. I would point to all of the things that black people already experience, and then knowing that the sort of wage gap and or sort of the earning gap, I guess, put out by Road to Economic Prosperity would show that black folks are making less money compared to other folks in the province or white folks in the province. And so then when we factor in what the price of units are, and again, we go back to the stack of things that black people have to deal with, and then we look at the sort of the earnings, it's going to make it exponentially more challenging, because we haven't even overcome that stack of things, and then we're just adding something else to the mix.
So then what's the solution? It sounds like all hope is lost, maybe, I don't know.
No, I certainly don't think that all hope is lost, because I don't, those reports certainly paint an accurate picture, but that's also not everyone. And so, there's needs to be multiple solutions to it. And so there's not any one thing. I think that if the province or if the city had that answer, they may or may not have done it by now. If black community had the answer, like, we would have done it yesterday. And so I think that there's multiple solutions that are involved here. And so I do think that there's a lot of social things that certainly that need to happen. I think that there's conversations in terms of economic growth within the black community. I think that there needs to be conversations around development. So do we have black developers within the province? We certainly have the skilled labor. We have a lot of the skilled labor. But a black development company would be awesome. I think we have a lot of community land trusts that are being developed, a lot of really innovative things that are coming out of Upper Hammonds Plains and Curtis Wiley. I know that there's land trusts as well in Truro through Miss Lynn Jones. And I know that land trusts are becoming a much more of a mainstream thing, in a way that Black people are sort of seeing their way through, not losing their land, but then also acquiring land in development. And in just, I guess, in direct relation to the housing crisis, is just that we experience it differently. Our solutions to our experience may also need to look a little bit different. And so it's not that community land trusts are happening for everyone. I didn't see it spike for everyone, but specifically the Black community sort of sees this as a way of, well, if we're able to sort of grab this land, if we're able to put some properties under this, then this may be a viable option for us to sort of overcome some of the housing crisis and or the economic challenges as well.
So the average person on the street who's never heard of community land trust, or maybe they've heard of it, but they don't really understand what it is. What is it? How should people maybe get more involved, or what should their takeaways be?
Sure. I'm also forgetting a predominant one through Trino Morton. I just have to mention New Roots Community Land Trust is also a really very new one, but a predominant one within North End of Halifax. And so Community Land Trust is actually originated in the United States from Black people as a way to sort of acquire land. Black people wanted to acquire land, Black people wanted to keep land, and the Community Land Trust is a viable way. So what a Community Land Trust does is it really sort of kind of sweeps underneath and puts the land in a trust. Then you can, once you have the land, it's really usually like 99 years that people sort of put that land in a trust. So then it's now owned by the Black community. Assets can then be put into that trust. And so assets could be homes, could be more land, and as those assets go into that trust, it's now owned by that trust, which means it blocks any outside developers from being able to actually come in, because the trust is sort of kind of the shield around that. And so then if the land is in the trust, then the Black community is then able to do what they wish with that land under protection because it's under the Community Land Trust. And I know that, so as an example of sort of two things that are happening simultaneously, so, with Curtis Wiley and the Upper Hammonds Plains Community Land Trust, they're looking at, massive large-scale development in their community on their land, by their terms. New Roots Community Land Trust with Trino Morton is looking at, the historic Black community, North End Halifax, African Nova Scotian community was displaced originally by the original development of the Cogswell district. And so now where we're having the new development of the Cogswell district, there's a conversation of how should the Black community be involved in this conversation. And they're looking at how can they acquire. There's certain plots of where buildings or developments are going to go. And so they're looking at acquiring one of those land plots to put mixed-use housing under the New Roots Community Land Trust, so that there's something there cemented in history for the Black community that the Black community would benefit from.
So you're hopeful that these initiatives will be beneficial?
Well, they are. They are beneficial. I'm not even hopeful that they are. Like, knowing these two people who are sort of leading these ones that I know about, like, they're going to make it happen.
How soon can, I guess, Black people then expect there to be affordable housing specific to them as Black people in the province?
Well, I think,
is it a long wait? Is it?
Well, I think we need to talk about affordable housing, right? Like affordable. Like, what does that mean, and for who? Because I think that
less than 50% of your income to start.
Yes, but people living in public housing pay 30% of their gross income before net. And so is that affordable? Some people would say no. I lived in public housing for majority of my life, and to pay 30% of your gross income is what sort of is the bit for me that's unfair, because we're not. This is before taxes. This is before CPP. This is before any of that stuff comes off.
Sounds low for today's standards.
Yeah, but it's your gross, and so it's not accurate what I'm taking home, and so I'm paying 30% on a number that's actually not the number that I'm going to take home.
So north of 30%.
Yeah. So you're basing it on a number that's really not real until I get the net. So base it on 30% of the net. That might be more realistic. And so, when we think about affordable housing for Black people in the province, there's been there's been a significant amount of work in a short period of time with just those two community land trusts. But the thing is that what's happening across the province is that there's development that's coming in and seeing the land that is historically African Nova Scotian land and wanting to sort of develop on that land. And so there's that fight that has to be fought first so that we don't lose that land. And then once we have that, then we can start talking about, we can actually have some affordable housing developments in the African Nova Scotian community for the African Nova Scotian community. And, you know, potential solution to that might be looking at, you know, some type of policies and or legislation for the African Nova Scotian community that developers can't just go and have access to historic African Nova Scotian land. There's a different process that has to happen first so that the community is involved. Because once that thing starts rolling, it's often very difficult to stop once that starts rolling. So I think there's a lot of issues that need to be tackled first so that we can sort of truly kind of actualize affordable housing that would be specific for Black and African Nova Scotian communities and in the Black and African Nova Scotian communities. Because the land was once land that nobody wanted. And the locations were once places that, you know, just historically speaking, white folks didn't want to go to. And Black folks made a way out of no way. And now those places are extremely attractive to everyone.
Oh, honey, we're about to get very busy up in here.